Hello, this is Ron Martoia, and I'm coming to you at THEO-LOGIE, his particular blog. And actually, I've been asked by some outside sources to come, and I'm going to be honest with you, correct some of the problems that he's creating in this particular blog. We have been talking a little bit about addiction, and what I want to do is bring us into a recognition. The last step in the whole addiction 12-step process is to tell your story. And what I would like to do is have us think about the stories that we not only tell the people around us and that we tell people in community, but also to think about how the stories we tell are actually formed. We're actually part of a nest of stories. Very much like the Russian Matryoshka dolls, where there's a big doll and you take it apart and there's another doll inside and you take it apart and they keep getting smaller and smaller. There's a me story. It's the I am story. Who is Ron? Who are you? There's also the we story. Who are we? That is the we, our story. And then there's the story, the bigger framing story of God's narrative. And in the addiction process, often what we find out is there are certain things that we tell ourselves in the way our own storytelling and narrative's been formed that ends up creating in us certain sorts of drives and certain desires that unmet end up leading to addictions, end up leading to deep, deep attachments. And those stories that continue to cycle in our heads continue to fuel those sorts of addictions. And so understanding the my story becomes very, very important. When you and I are young, we start having stories read to us. Our parents read to us from the time we're very little, or our grandparents, our caretakers, and those stories we begin to identify with, and at the same time they're telling us stories, reading us rhymes, reading us fables, reading us kids' literature, they're also giving us part of the we story, some of the family history, some of the material related to where we come from, who we are, where our grandparents lived and came from, what nationality we are. And that complex of events begins to create what we call our identity. There's the me story and there's the we story. When you and I begin to grow up and we start to enter into school, though, that storytelling takes on a new dimension. Teachers get involved, coaches get involved, and all of a sudden it's not just the parents telling us a we story. It's not just literature that we're reading creating a me identity. But what we end up with is teachers and music people and coaches beginning to help create a storyline in our head that we get attached to and that we start to root into our identity. This is where the very beginning stages of who we come to understand ourselves to be takes root. And this is where we begin to ask the question, are we living a fact or are we living a fiction? Are we living out of a true sense of who we actually really are, or are we living out of a made-up story that we have adopted because somebody told us something that has landed in our head and that we're stuck with that's actually a fiction? Many of you probably have had the experience where growing up there was some event, some negative event that lodged in your head, and it has ended up rooting into the narrative and the story that you tell yourself every day. Maybe you were the kid in 3rd grade who didn't get your name up on the blackboard for being the smart kid in math class. And you've carried around your whole life, I'm the dumb kid. I'm the kid who never got his name up on the board. Or maybe you were picked last in 6th grade for the rugby team. And you've carried around in your mind this whole time, why am I always picked last? And these things begin to root into our identity and begin to form who we are. And we want to explore that and continue thinking about that. And so when it comes to thinking about my story, your story, our story, I want to invite you. Why don't you spend a few moments reflecting, what pieces of your story do you continue to tell yourself that as you reflect you come to find out might be more fiction than actual fact? These are the kinds of things that we're exploring in the Transformational Trek Tribe. You can find information at tttribe.com, and many people watching this blog are already a part of it and are interacting online in a learning community where we're dialoguing about exactly these kinds of things. We'll continue this conversation next time I see you.